for the divinity of mankind eternally, based upon John chapter 1, if you took Brother Urshanson's position, because we existed in the mind of God also, therefore we are as eternal as Jesus Christ. And that type of logic will just simply defeat you when you try and exegete a passage.
Bob?
Well, it's interesting that he should say that that the Word was with God would indicate that it had to be face-to-face with God. Job said with him were wisdom and power. And yet wisdom and power are not persons in the Godhead. They're not persons. And so...
but Bob, let me ask you a question at that point. Does it say anywhere that the wisdom became flesh and dwelt among us?
I believe that Jesus was the wisdom of God. Dr. Martin mentioned that they handled the word of life. What they handled was the flesh of Jesus Christ, and that flesh of Jesus Christ was not with God in the beginning.
Okay, but what do you make of the fact that something was with God? You're saying that it's impersonal?
Well, you've said something was with God, and John 1:1 says that something was with God.
But verse 2 says he was there.
All right. It doesn't matter. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. What was with God? Was it a collateral person? If so, we fling ourselves right in the face of the entire revelation of the Old Testament, the Shema of Israel. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. We divide him into persons, and we say that with God, in the beginning, were collateral persons, when God, throughout the Old Testament, says there was nobody with him.
But do you deny that in verse 2 and 3, he was with God, all things were made by him? Doesn't that refer back to the Word?
It refers back to the Word. But when you say him, all things were made by him, things were made by the Word in respect to the fact that God spoke the worlds into existence. They were made by the Word in respect to the fact that all things were made through him, with him in view, with reference to him, on account of him, because of him, that God did all of his creating in the world with Christ in view, with the future manifestation of himself in view. We would not see...
Okay.
If I could just say,
go ahead.
It would have been a simple thing for God in the beginning to have solved the controversy by saying, in the beginning was the Son, and the Son was with God. In the beginning was the second person in the Trinity, and the second person in the Trinity was with God. Whatever was back there was with God, not with God the Father, but with God. If it had said that the Word was with God the Father, then we'd have the two persons in the Trinity. But it said the Word was with God, with God.
Cal?
What he's attempting to argue, of course, is that you've got a contradiction when you call the Word a person who is distinct from some other person who is God, and then say that they're the same God. But in fact, he's stuck logically with the same kind of contradiction when he makes the word word refer to some impersonal principle like wisdom, or an impersonal characteristic or attribute like wisdom. Because then what we have is the word wisdom, this impersonal attribute, was with God, and the Word was God, in which case you've got an impersonal attribute which all by its lonesomeness is God. You've got the same logical contradiction in terms. The solution to it is to recognize that there is a distinction between a being and a person. And it's, as Aristotle called it, it's a distinction in categories of existence. There are beings, there are persons, there are relations, there are lengths, there are weights, there are all sorts of different categories of existence. Being is one and person is another. The solution to this apparent logical problem, if you term the Word as a person who is coexistent eternally with another person of the Father, is to recognize that it's not logically problematic to say that there are two persons who are the same being.
Okay, Bob, we got about 30 seconds. You want to comment?
Oh, yes. When you speak of contradictions, how could you have a contradiction than to say that there's a person with God in the beginning when God said there isn't one? When God said he's absolutely one. How do you define
God expressly says here that there is a person with him
Where
because
does he
it
say
is
that?
the Word who became flesh, and that uses personal pronouns about him. He was in the beginning with God, not it. He was in the beginning with God, and that Word became flesh, dwelt among us. We beheld his glory, not its glory. The glory as of the only begotten from the Father. What's the only begotten from the Father if it is not John 1:18? The only begotten God, John 3:16. The only begotten Son.
I'm looking for what you said here. You said he was in the beginning with God. My Bible says the same was in the beginning with God. The pronoun isn't introduced until the third verse. You said it said that he was in the beginning.
Fine, all right. You can use the same if you want to. It happens to be a masculine emphatic pronoun there. In the third verse, it's the masculine regular personal pronoun, and either way, the personal pronoun relates to word.
But how do you then reconcile a person, collateral person, with God in the beginning? You've got two persons, and actually you're going to add a third person before we're through here. And
so
God says He's absolutely alone. Isaiah 44:24.
Go ahead, Walter.
I'd like to think here for a second that it really isn't a question of how you or we reconcile something. It's a question of what the text specifically says. Now, the text says the Word was face-to-face with God. The text says in the masculine pronoun that you have a person, that you are not dealing with an abstract logos of philo. You are dealing with a person, and you're dealing with a person who became flesh. Now, what interests me is that when you get to the book of Hebrews, chapter 1, you are dealing, that's a very good passage to go to, you are dealing with the subject of a dialogue that takes place, which is before the incarnation. Before the incarnation. When he was bringing the first begotten into the world, he said, "Let all the angels of God worship him." And of the Son, he says, talking to the Son, "Thy throne, O God, is forever and ever. A scepter of righteousness is the scepter of thy kingdom." So if you're going to take the Hebrews passage literally, and we are to interpret literally unless we have reason from the context not to, there was a dialogue going on between somebody who was with God the Father. And that person is addressed by God the Father, and that person responds in Hebrews chapter 10. "Lo, it is written in the volume of the book, I am coming to do thy will, O God." When? When he was coming into the world. Now, you're not talking incarnation with the human nature of Jesus being the dialogue. You're talking now with a pre-existent personality talking to the Father. Now, you cannot eliminate that personality-wise or grammatically. And if you can, I'd like to see how it's going to be done.
Let me ask you, is that personality that's talking to the Father the Son, the eternal Son of God?
No, there is no such thing as the eternal Son of God. We both agree that the doctrine of the eternal generation of the Son derives from Origen, who was heretical on that point. So we don't have to bother with that. I just want you to tell me how grammatically you are going to escape the force of the fact that before the incarnation there is a dialogue. Now explain the dialogue.
Excellent. Look at the Bible and tell me if you think that dialogue was before the incarnation from the Father to the Son. Notice that it says here, "Thou